morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News. This week's headlines. The Pope says you're selfish if you don't have kids. And he denounces the cancel culture. Police seize a rifle and 500 rounds of ammunition from a controversial Christchurch pastor. The missing Florida governor finally resurfaces at a MAGAchurch event. A right-wing Israeli MP tried to storm a Palestinian hunger strikers' hospital room. Novak Djokovic is compared to Jesus after being detained in Australia over the visa dispute. Gone by 2040. Why some religions are declining in Canada faster than ever. Indian Muslims got less religious since 2016, shows a CSDS study. Asher's gay cake case. The European Court rules case inadmissible. And a sacked belly dancing teacher sparks Egyptian debate over women's rights. Okay, so during a general audience at the Vatican, the head of the Roman Catholic Church criticized people who choose pets over toddlers, arguing that a denial of fatherhood or motherhood diminishes us. Is the Pope not celibate? In a discourse about the decline of parenthood, he went on to applaud those who adopt and encourage making adoptions easier, saying, "This kind of choice is among the highest forms of love. How many children in the world are waiting for someone to take care of them?" The church is clearly fighting to survive. According to a Gallup poll, it's losing significantly more members than Protestants in the United States. And in countries like Germany, as many as 1 in 3 Catholics say they are considering leaving because of the cover-up of the sex abuse scandals and other perceived missteps by church leaders. For starters, sex abuse scandals and cover-ups have rocked the institution for decades. Meanwhile, Catholic women worldwide are increasingly seeing themselves as good for more than just childbearing or reading at Mass, prompting them to question why exactly women are not allowed to be priests or to decide if and when to have babies. Meanwhile, Pope Francis also denounced cancel culture as a form of ideological colonization at a Vatican event. Under the guise of defending diversity, it ends up cancelling all sense of identity, he says. See this video.
Come ho avuto modo di affermare in altre occasioni, ritengo che si tratti di una forma di colonizzazione ideologica che non lascia spazio alla libertà di espressione e che oggi assume sempre più la forma di quella cancel culture che invade tanti ambiti e istituzioni pubbliche. In nome della protezione delle diversità si finisce per cancellare il senso di ogni identità, con il rischio di far tacere le posizioni che difendono un'idea rispettosa ed equilibrata delle varie sensibilità. Si va elaborando un pensiero unico, pericoloso, costretto a rinnegare la storia, o peggio ancora a riscriverla in base a categorie contemporanee, mentre ogni situazione storica va interpretando secondo l'ermeneutica dell'epoca, non l'ermeneutica di oggi.
In New Zealand, police raided the home of a controversial anti-government, pro-gun pastor on New Year's Eve to seize a gun and ammunition after receiving concerns about a person's well-being. Carl Bromley, founder of the Life Connection Missionary Baptist Fellowship in Christchurch, received a voicemail and a letter in his mailbox explaining police had taken his rifle on the grounds they had responded to a concern regarding his suitability to hold a firearms license. He claims officers ransacked his home in Avondale when they took his rifle, along with 500 rounds of ammunition and firearms parts. A voicemail left by a police officer following the raid said, "Firearms licensing will be in touch regarding further inquiries about your suitability to be a firearms license holder." Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, after going missing for nearly 2 weeks, resurfaced on stage New Year's Eve at a Sean Foyt MAGAchurch super spreader event to accept an award for his courage in opposing mask mandates and COVID vaccines. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a right-wing Israeli lawmaker, showed up at the Asaf Harofeh hospital and tried to break into the room of Hisham Abu Hawash, his family said. Right-wing Israeli lawmaker Itamar on Tuesday allegedly tried to storm a hospital room to harass a Palestinian detainee who was recovering after a 141-day hunger strike. Palestinian hunger striker Hisham Abu Hawash was taken to the Asaf Harofeh hospital south of Tel Aviv on the 26th of December after his health seriously deteriorated. He ended his hunger strike, protesting his detention without trial or charge on Tuesday, following a deal with Israeli authorities to release him. Imad Abu Hawash, Hisham's brother, said that his family was in the detainee's hospital room when they heard insults in Hebrew coming towards them. "I came out and saw that it was Ben-Gvir, accompanied by his bodyguards, and Baruch Martin, a settler leader in Hebron," Imad Abu Hawash told the New Arab publication. The Knesset member tried to push his way into Hisham's room, but solidarity activists who were present and family members blocked his way, Abu Hawash said. Ben-Gvir called us terrorists and other ugly names, and he even pushed one of the activists who was replying to his insults, he said. Following the escape of 6 Palestinian inmates from Israel's high-security Gilboa prison in September, Gvir tweeted that Israeli forces should have killed Palestinian prisoners before they escaped. According to human rights groups, some 500 Palestinians are currently held in Israeli jails without trial or charge, among them 4 children and 1 woman. In December, Gvir said Israeli security forces should be given authorization to kill prisoners when they protest. Novak Djokovic was yesterday compared to Jesus and Spartacus by his father, as the world number 1 remained locked in hotel detention in Melbourne. The 9-time champion had his visa cancelled again in a dispute over his medical exemption to play the Australian Open without a COVID vaccine. And now some good news. Religiosity in Canada is at an all-time low, with recently released data from Statistics Canada showing only 68% of Canadians 15 or older now report having a religious affiliation. It's the first time that number has dipped below 70% since StatCan began tracking the data in 1985. It's important to note that this decline is not across the board. The number of Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Hindus is increasing, and StatCan predicts the number of Canadians reporting a non-Christian religious affiliation could double by the year 2036. Christianity, however, is in sharp decline. In 2011, 67.3% of Canadians said they were affiliated with the Christian religion. By 2019, that number had dropped to 63.2%. Catholicism, Canada's largest denomination, now accounts for 32% of Canadians over 15, which is down from 46.9% in 1996. See this video.
Right, the decline story has been going on for so long now, roughly since the 60s, depending on where you are in Canada, but pretty much since the 60s. And so that we're kind of almost tired of it, right? Like, but you do have to kind of see it is a major societal shift that we're going through. And so I guess the way I see it is you know, there's a series of factors at play. Like, we're just not in the same kind of society we were, say, at the end of the 19th century or start of the 20th century. You know, like kind of that Christian church went with a set of other social factors, right? So you think back to the 19th century, the hub of social life was the village, and in the center of the village was a church or multiple churches, and they were the kind of center of, you know, community life, sometimes providing social services. They were often the key players in that when there was less of a government presence. And so, you know, and so things kind of revolved around the church in terms of life and the life world that people lived in. And so, you know, people were raised in that world, and so were raised to see this as important, and there were heavy social pressures to be involved. If you weren't, there were heavy, what we call social penalties, right? Like you could be ostracized and stuff. And so we're not in that kind of rural life world anymore. We've shifted to a different society where there are alternatives, basically, right? There's alternatives in terms of who's providing the social services, right? Schools, health, you know, education. And we're in a society where there's a lot of secular alternatives for things like entertainment and getting together, right? So you can do that through a church or a gurdwara or a temple or, you know, a mosque, but you can also do it somewhere else, right? And so what we've seen is religion hasn't completely disappeared. It's definitely there, and we'll talk about where it's at, but it's not like this vast majority thing that everyone does in the same way anymore. You know, there was still diversity in the past too within Christianity for the most part, but now, you know, what remains of religion is much more diverse, but there's also a lot of other ways that people kind of live their lives, what they do on Sundays, kind of, you know, how they you know, stay in touch with family and friends, and kind of how they think of these big life questions as well, right? And so it's in that sense, like I always like to turn the question on its head, is like, why were so many people involved with Christianity in the past, right? Rather than saying, why are so few involved now or less are involved now? And it's, you know, the kind of, there's not one key factor that has just done it on its own. It's kind of like a series of transformations, just like we're not all farmers, like maybe a vast majority of people were, say, 100, 150 years ago. Now it's kind of like, you know, there's a lot more going on in society. There's a lot of other options. And so there's not this kind of one thing that everyone does anymore. It's a lot more diverse and complex than that. And so yeah, that's kind of how I see it, right? Is kind of we've changed as a society, and that is part of it. Like I am currently in a very rural area north of Gatineau, Quebec, and like, you know, you see the crumbling like a barn in the middle of the field, and you see like the crumbling United Church next to it. It was kind of like they almost went together, right? But you know, that being said, there have been changes. Religion's still around, but it's not really in the same shape that it used to be in. But we tend to think of it that way still, right? Like we tend to think of how it was in the past, and kind of rather than thinking about how it is now in the present, right?
A gay rights activist has lost a 7-year discrimination dispute over a cake order as the European Court of Human Rights ruled his case inadmissible. Gareth Lee started legal action back in 2014 after a Christian-run Belfast bakery refused to make him a cake with the slogan, "Support Gay Marriage." The family firm Ashes said the slogan contravened their Christian beliefs. The European Court ruled Mr. Lee's case inadmissible, saying he had failed to exhaust all options in the UK courts. The Belfast man has long argued that by refusing to fulfill his order, the bakery had discriminated against him on grounds of his sexual orientation and political beliefs. He won his original case and a subsequent appeal in the UK courts, but in 2018, the UK Supreme Court disagreed with the lower courts and found in favour of the bakery. Mr. Lee then took his case to the European Court of Human Rights, where it was examined by 7 judges who decided, by majority, that it should be dismissed. The long-running dispute has raised questions about religious freedom and discrimination law. See this video. In Egypt, a viral video of a teacher belly dancing has sparked a national debate about women's rights and the country's socially conservative values. Aya Youssef was sacked and divorced by her husband after she was filmed by a colleague at a work social event on a Nile boat without her permission. Footage shows her moving to the music alongside male teaching staff. Belly dancing is said to date back to Pharaoh-Noahic times, but it is often frowned upon now for women to dance in public. The video of Ms. Youssef, who is wearing the Islamic headscarf and a long-sleeve dress for the daytime river trip, looks very tame by Western standards. Women's rights advocates in Egypt spoke out strongly, insisting the teacher did nothing wrong and saying that she was a victim of a witch hunt. In her support and in defense of personal freedoms, the deputy head of another school posted photographs on social media of herself dancing at her daughter's wedding. The head of the Egyptian Center for Women's Rights, Dr. Nihad Abu Kumsan, offered Ms. Youssef a job in her office and asked her to bring her contract from the Education Ministry in order to file a legal complaint against her dismissal. This may have helped prompt a rethink. Local authorities have now appointed Ms. Youssef to a position at a new school. The teacher complained that the affair was a transgression of her privacy. She pointed out that she did not dance at a public institution or in front of students, and said she planned to sue the person who filmed the video last month. See this video.
بينكد عليها طول اليوم. اول حاجه غضب، هفضل عايشه حياتي كلها كده، بتحسي ان انت في حاله استنفار امني طول الوقت. انا كنت حوالي 15 او 16 سنه، احنا دور اول مرتفع يعني، فحد وقف بالعربيه قدام باب البيت او قدام الشباك يعني اللي انا واقفه فيه، فتح سوسه بنطلونه وطلع العضو. وانا عندي 4 سنين لحد تقريبا وانا عندي 7 سنين. جيران جدتي كان في منهم ولد عنده تقريبا حوالي 17 سنه ساعتها، كان بيتحرش بيا جسديا بشكل متواصل. ما كنتش مدركه هو بيعمل ايه، بس قد ما كنت مدركه ان في حاجه غلط بتحصل، بس مش عارفه اعمل ايه.
نزلت من الباص بتاعي بس بعدي الشارع، واحد طلع راسه من الشباك وتف عليا، كنت لابسه فستان فجه على رجلي وببص عليه بشوف مين عمل كده، لقيته مطلع راسه من العربيه وبيضحك. وانا صغيره في رابعه ابتدائي كنت مع خالته في سوق الخضار عادي، في حد جه من ورايا ولمسني من ورا او مسكني من ظهري،
وانا ماشيه في الشارع راح واحد راجل كبير عينات بص لي جامد قوي كده، فهو قرب مني فانا بصغر له فراح حدف لي بوسه.
ببص حواليا طول الوقت، حواليا في ايه؟ اول حاجه ببص لها الطب بصراحه.
ممكن مره وشه ذهب وانا بضرب واحد في اتوبيس لابسه خاتم كبير، بستخدمه في ان انا بضرب، بشيل ابره حاجه اسمها ابره منجد. انا ما خدتش بالي ان انا ما بقاش في تحرش وصول معايا غير لما نزلت من غيره.
Muslims report more discrimination than other minorities, but instead of turning to faith, they are getting less religious, reports say. Young Muslims stand somewhat apart from their Hindu, Sikh, and Christian cohorts, as they are the only community to have recorded a significant decline in religious activities over the last 5 years, according to a survey report released earlier this month. The report, titled Indian Youth, Aspirations and Visions for the Future, was based on a survey conducted in July and August this year on 6,277 people aged 18 to 34 across 18 Indian states. The study was carried out by the Center for the Study of Developing Societies, CSDS, under its research program in collaboration with German think tank Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. The survey found that the proportion of Muslims praying, fasting, visiting mosques, and reading or watching religious material was lower than it was in 2016, when the last CSDS Lockniti survey was conducted. We have a graphic of this. Muslims stood apart from other communities in another respect: their experience of being discriminated against by their friends because of religion. While 2 other religious minorities, Christians and Sikhs, were similar to Muslims in expressing a strong sense of despair about communal harmony in India, a much lower proportion of them reported experiencing religious discrimination. The 2016 CSDS Youth Survey, conducted on a sample size of 5,681, found that Muslim youths reported higher religiosity than any other group. In that year, 97% of Muslim respondents said they prayed regularly. However, in 2021, only 86% of Muslim youth said they prayed regularly, a decline of 11% from 5 years ago. Free Thought Hour, my interview show, will be starting in a few minutes, so stay tuned to this channel. This week's guest is a retired GP, Jeremy Lockwood, who discovered an enormous dinosaur fossil on the Isle of Wight. Come and chat with us or ask questions live. The GAN team will be back with our weekly news review next week. Please like, share, subscribe, set the notifications, etc. This has been Global Atheist News. Thank you for watching.